Okay. Can you hear me?
You're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry about that. I need to get one thing from the card and we'll go ahead and get started. Alrighty. There's that beautiful bean footage. Everybody doing all right today?
Right.
Everybody, I'm saying it like I didn't see it, like I didn't just see most of y'all like 15 minutes ago.
Can't see.
Hello? Can y'all hear me?
Yep. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me change my camera real quick. Alrighty. Well, guess we're ready to get started. Everybody good?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes.
All right, Anaya good. Shaden, Grace. Who's iPhone?
No, it's too cold. I was going to sit outside, but here.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. We respect everybody's time. Welcome to our first TTM or the Tennis Mechanics Q&A session. Hopefully we'll do this monthly. We'll have a speaker that comes to share information, not just to inspire the kids, but also to educate people on this tennis journey to help all of us see our community a little bit further than in the tennis realm than we could get alone. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce, we have two guests actually. I didn't tell you about the secret guest. Jermaine Jenkins, and we'll get into his background a little bit more, is our special guest. And then there's Sean Holcomb Jones. Where is he? On and out having some, okay, there you go. Yep, who is the national coordinator for NJTLs, which is the, I'll let him explain exactly what it is, but we'll start with Jermaine first and foremost. You there, Jermaine?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So, those questions. All right. Let's start off with tell us a little bit about your background, your tennis journey, And what are some of your favorite parts of that?
Yeah, so first off, thank you guys for whoa, sorry. First off, thank you guys for making this call. I got family coming in town in about an hour, so I know everybody's trying to get to the holidays. So just thank you for spending this time and having me on this call. So my background, just really quick. My dad started us playing tennis. I grew up 8 brothers, 1 sister, from College Park, Georgia. My dad played at Alta League in Atlanta. When he was 27 years old, he picked up his first tennis racket, got us involved, and I was fortunate enough to have an older brother who pretty much set the tone and set the standard by getting a D1 college scholarship and just taking the game as really far in our eyes, at that time. So he was pretty much my idol at the time. So that's pretty much how I got started. I just kind of followed suit of what my older brother did, and I wanted to at least match that or take it further. Terrell, are you still there?
All right, there we go. All right, good deal, good deal. All right, so I don't know if they know, but I'm was a little bit closer to the story. So I remember growing up, man, you were #1 in the state, #1 in the South. It really irritated me because at one point I felt like we were really close in middle school, and then next thing you know, man, you're on top of the game and you playing ball at Clemson, man. So if you could just let the kids know who are interested in playing college ball, how much work did you have to put in to even qualify to get a scholarship to play for Clemson?
Yeah, so I mean, really good question. For me, like I mentioned before, I didn't really look at it as work just because that was the standard set by my older brother. And so I was fortunate enough to have him just set the standard, and that was kind of the bar for us of, you either playing D1 tennis or, you're not playing, So I mean, as far as work, I mean, obviously there's a lot of sacrifice that went into that. For my family, we're huge competitors, so it was more so of, you wanted to outdo the next person that was standing next to you. So I mean, I just remember nights, and some of my favorite nights were just, calling Coach Bird or calling, my coaches and saying, hey, can you pick me up? Or can you take me to practice with you? And I don't know if Atlanta is still like this, but Georgia Tech at the time was like one of the only indoor facilities in the city. So, for me, I was just happy to get out of the house. So any chance I got to get out of the house, I was always down at Georgia Tech, like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., practicing. And those were my favorite parts of tennis, just getting out of the house. So my mom wouldn't, yell at me about making up my bed. So I tried to stay in the tournament as long as I could. So, I could, just stay on the road.
Yeah. And for some of the kids who are on, just want to make sure that y'all heard him when he said he enjoys practice. He likes going to practice. He tried to practice as often and as hard as he could.
Which is very tricky for this generation, because I feel like, they have so many options, like, and I think, Sean will speak to this, but we talk about this all the time offline, like, like why tennis, like why, because tennis for me was getting out of the house, like I said, it was a way to get out, get a D1 scholarship, make sure that I didn't have to be on my parents' cell phone plan, so that's what tennis meant for me. Whereas some, it could be just an extracurricular activity for someone else.
Yeah, true indeed. All right. So something else that some of our people might not know is that you had the privilege in your coaching career to work with Venus Williams. Hold on, let me turn my camera back on. You had the privilege to work with Venus Williams, Serena, Coco Gauff, as well as Naomi Osaka. If you could share, what was it like working with them or being on their coaching staff?
Yeah, I think number one, it was incredible. If I had to put it in one word, incredible, and I think I would say very educational. Like Venus, number one, she really showed me the world. And number two, I think Venus really showed me what it meant to like really be dedicated to something and what it looked like to have a really strong character. Like no matter, I mean, you guys see her, you know, what you see is what you get. I mean, she's out there with, you know, her elbows patched, her knees patched, and she loves playing the game and she doesn't care. Like, you know, I think at some point, you know, she was like, it meant so much more to her to win. But I think right now she's just grateful to be able to still play. And the way that she treats tennis is the way that she treats all of her other endeavors. You know, when we're done, because I lived with her for 3 years. And so when we're done with practice, she's like on to the next thing. And that's like 20 different things going on outside of tennis, which is pretty cool. And then I think Coco, obviously, you know, Mr. Williams would always say this one thing. He would always talk to me because he would come early to practice, but, you know, he would always simplify things. And he said that, you know, a lot of people get tennis, you know, they try to overcomplicate things. And, you know, it's really simple. You pick the right dog, you know, and you would never have to teach a Chihuahua how to, I mean, you would never have to teach a pit bull how to beat a Chihuahua, you know, and for him, tennis was all about making sure he picks the right dog in the fight and training that dog. So, and I think, yeah, just, it was educational on so many levels, just being with Venus and learning, you know, every day.
Nice. Nice. All right. Last question for you. And then I'll let you all ask them questions for a few minutes. And if you could put them in the chat, just to make sure we keep it organized so we don't stay on here too long. But do you have any advice for any aspiring college players, or I have some who are looking to play professional tennis or at least internationally? What advice would you have for them, or would you share with them on their journey?
Yeah, I think with anything that you do, you know, it doesn't have to be tennis, but, you know, get in the environment, you know, immerse yourself in the environment. So if that's tennis, make sure you go to the US Open or go to your local college match, or wherever the ballers are, that's where you want to be, you know, and get exposed to that, see what they're doing, because I think it's so much that you can learn without a coach ever telling you what to do. You know, if you're just in that right environment, you know, a lot of things that you could pick up on your own. And I mean, let that be the teacher, you know, and if you don't have that environment, then, you know, find as close as what you can to that.
Okay. All right. Well, this is the section where we open it up for a little Q&A. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Jenkins? Put them in the chat and I'll read them out, and we'll go from there. No questions right now?
I see. What is their training schedule? So they're all at different stages in their career. So Coco practice twice a day. She'll probably, normally in the morning, she does an hour and a half of technical work, and then an hour and a half to 2 of technical work, and then our drilling, and then in the afternoon is normally match play, our serves and returns, depending on what they're focusing on. Whereas Venus was at a point in her career where she just wasn't going to put in 4 hours a day. You know, she does 2 hours of on the court and 1 hour in the gym. And that was basically 10 o'clock every morning, 9 or 10 o'clock every morning. She's practicing. I think Serena was the same. And then as for Naomi, Naomi drew her confidence from fitness. So when I worked with Naomi, like she was doing, like for every 1 hour of tennis, she was probably doing 3 hours of fitness, because that's just where she gets her confidence from. If she feels like she's fit, then, you know, she feels good in her skin. I can't really see that question. Let me see.
Okay. Yeah, the next one is, does personality play a role in how successful you are in tennis?
Yeah, 100%. I think that works both ways for the coach and the player. And I felt like for me, I'm a little bit more laid back coach. I'm definitely not going to scream and yell. I'm more of, okay, let's go watch some film, more tactical, you know. So I think for me, I gel well with a person like Venus, you know, who is a little bit more laid back and, you know, not so emotional per se. So I think that it works both ways with the coach and the player. I think it definitely is 100% it plays a role.
All right. All right. Next question. When you were coming up playing tennis, did you experience racism? And if so, how did you handle it?
Yeah, so I think we all, I mean, on this call, I think, you know, you, Sean, and myself, we've all experienced it, whether it was blatant racism or subliminal. But I think that the way that my parents taught me to handle it was, you know, let my racket do the talking.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I never really got out of line to where somebody like blatantly like, okay, like, you know, call me the N-word, but no, I mean, even on the tour, you get the stares, kind of like, you know, what are you doing out here? You know, I mean, you get the stares from the Europeans, you know, they try to make you like intimidate you, you know, like kind of like, this is my house. Like, what are you doing here? But I think, you know, the Williams were so good at like kind of tearing that door down and like embracing that, you know, whereas, you know, I feel like some of the athletes struggle with that, you know. But I think it's becoming more normalized to see, you know, brown and black people, especially on the women's side, you know, we're dominating in tennis.
For sure. For sure. All right. Next, all the questions are flying in now. Okay. All right. So next question. Okay. Do you, what is your stance on Naomi's stance on mental health? I mean, do you feel
good stuff now? Okay.
Qualified? Yeah. I mean, because you were very close with her.
Y'all warm me up.
Yeah. All right. I know, right? Give you the easy stuff first. It's like a first round match. Now we on to a seed.
Okay. Real talk. Okay. So what's my stance on her mental health and how it affects players? I think that, you know, the positive side, she did shine a light on, you know, mental health and normalizing like it's okay to not be okay. I think.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if you ask anybody from the old school, you know, it's kind of like suck it up, you know, figure it out, or, you know, it was more of a, you know, suffer in silence type of deal. And I do think that some of Naomi's stuff could be a little bit tone deaf, you know, in the sense of some of the things that she feels she's going through. But my stance on it, I don't think my stance really matters, you know, if I could say that. But I mean, I think Billie Jean King always said pressure was a privilege, you know, and so it's a privilege to be in that position. So I think that yeah, she definitely has to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think that's dope. It's one of those things that I think it just kind of got blown up because she's in the spotlight, but everybody deals with it in their own way.
100%. 100%.
All right. Next question. What techniques would you recommend to strengthen your game overall? Or like if I can okay. So like Anaya, send me a message to kind of clear that up just a little bit. We'll go to another question and come back. That wasn't as clear. All right. So here's one from a dad. He said that I mentioned about the transition from middle school to high school where you took a big leap. I ain't gonna lie to you, man. I'll never forget that. I was like, man, I thought, you know, yeah, from 8th grade to 9th grade, this joker just became king of the South, man. But he said, what was an attributing factor for that evolution and progression where you becoming a better player?
I know Christy wants.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we talk about, you know, evolution, I think it, you know, the build of the makeup of any tennis player, any athlete, you know, you got to look at their family, look at the, you know, how are they raised, how are they brought up, you know, what's going on in the household. And like I said, I came from a really competitive family who set the bar super high, and and for me, it was more so like, you know, just I didn't know any better. You know, I knew I had to like at least be, you know, D1, be a D1 player because that was just like for us, it was like a fish been in water. You know, I didn't know that it was like that was an achievement. Um, if that makes sense.
No, it did.
So I think you know, I think it's kind of like where you set your sights and you know, like that determines your, you know, how high you go and how low you fall.
Okay. So and if I could have everybody to mute their mics, just to make sure there's no background. I think I muted. I'm new to this is my first Zoom call that I've hosted. So I'm new to some of the features. But if everyone could help me out by muting yourself if you're not speaking, I'd appreciate it. We'd appreciate it. All right, but yeah, man. I forgot the question. You were asking about the evolution and the progression as a player when you made that jump.
Yeah, and also too, just to level set. I mean, I did play other sports, so I played baseball and basketball coming up, and I played AAU ball. I actually played with Pac-Man Jones, who we went to school with, and Earl. You remember Earl? And yeah, I think also too for me getting cut, I got cut going to middle school basketball. And also my mom thought that, you know, I was around the wrong crowd with basketball and baseball. So that was really the evolution for me. Like my mom, it was more of I didn't have a choice. I had to play tennis. So
yeah.
And then, you know, just coming from a competitive environment, I tried to do the best I could, you know.
So you ended up having to streamline, and once you focus solely on tennis,
yeah,
everything just kind of took off.
But those other sports gave me the foundation of what like an athlete, you know, like you see a lot of people who just have their kids just play tennis, and you know it doesn't teach you what basketball or soccer or these other sports can teach you at a younger age.
For sure.
And you know, just that team sport feel as well.
For sure. All right, we got time for one, maybe two more questions, and then we're going to introduce Sean. All right. Let's see. Here's a good one. Was confidence something that you always had, or you had to build it and develop it?
Yeah, it's like some people, I think they kind of have that confidence, and that kind of boils down to your parents, how you were brought up as well. Like I remember going to practice with Venus, and you know, her dad would always come to practice and he would raise his hand and like he would always show the number 5, and what that meant was something as simple as you got to take 5 shadow swings before you hit any ball. And so, you know, she would look at him and say, yes, daddy, you know, and, you know, Venus was like 36, 37 at the time. But when I'm looking at that 12-year-old girl, when he asked her to do something, she's always like, yes, daddy. And so he pretty much like, I don't want to say brainwashed, but he definitely convinced them that they were great, you know? And so I think your environment plays into that confidence. But then also too, you know, that confidence is built. Like I said, like Naomi and a lot of players get their confidence from fitness. Some players get their confidence from, you know, just repetitions, you know, who feel like, okay, I've got a pretty solid fitness base. But yeah, I think confidence, I think it works both ways, environment, and it definitely can be built.
Okay. All righty. Well, we appreciate you, man. So we're gonna go ahead and introduce Mr. Sean Holcomb Jones.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Great questions.
Yep. All right, bring him to the front. And all right, Mr. Jones, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good, man. Thank you for jumping on the call with us. And you are the money man. We're gonna call you money man. Yeah, here to just share with the parents, man, who have higher aspirations and who are just starting this journey. I have quite a few parents who are in tennis for the long haul, and they don't know where to start. They're figuring it out as they go along. And so part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to give them use all the resources that I have to make sure that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, they can pull from people who already exist, who are already positioned and already have experiences doing this, so that they can go a little bit further than maybe I did or maybe Jermaine did growing up, because we already got access to certain people and certain information. So without further ado, man, if you could introduce yourself, tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll get into some questions.
Absolutely. Definitely a tough act to follow after my brother Jermaine. I mean, he got Venus and Naomi and Coco. I kind of work more behind the scenes. So, definitely appreciate being invited here and following a good brother like Jermaine. My name is Sean Holcomb Jones. I am the manager of the Excellence Program for USTA Foundation and also corporate activations. A little bit about myself. I of course played tennis growing up. I actually started playing in an NJTL in New York, in Schenectady, New York, and upstate New York. I went on from there to eventually move down to the Maryland, DC area. I played, your usual Mid-Atlantic tournaments, and went from there to play at first at a Division III university, and then to a Division I university in Towson, Maryland, at Towson University. From there, I kind of went on into the coaching realm. I was the director of tournament training, and then I went on to be the assistant coach at George Washington for the men's, then the head coach for Morgan State, and then the assistant coach at University of Maryland College Park for the women. After that, I moved kind of more into the corporate world, and now I work with the USTA Foundation on more of the corporate side of tennis. I think it's always really important, and one thing I actually try to pull away from a lot now is my coaching background, because I want players to know that, like, once your playing career is done, there's other options. Coaching is an option, and it's a great option. I coached for 20 years, but there's also options that are within the game that aren't necessarily coaching. You can be a manager, you can be a director, you can be an executive, you could work for shoe companies, you could work for racket companies, you could work in events, in tennis events. So I think it's really important for us to understand that as we go through this tennis journey, there's other stuff for us to do outside of being players and coaches going forward. So there's a lot of opportunities in the tennis ecosystem as a whole.
All right. Well, that was a dope intro. You actually answered the first question I was going to ask you, which was what made you want to be a part of the NJTL division of USTA.
What it was, and this is just my story, so this doesn't necessarily hold true for everybody. I spent a lot of time on the court. I played, I coached. I know what it's like to stand on the court for 8 hours straight and do private lessons. And I know what it's like to be in the summer and be outside and do a camp for 8 hours and then teach private lessons after the camp. I know what that grind looks like. I know what the grind of college tennis is, from recruiting to match play to on-court coaching to individuals. I know what those grinds look like. And as I continue to get older, I had told myself, one, I didn't want to be on the court as much. And I also wanted to figure out a way to get behind the scenes of tennis. Who's making the decisions? I feel like, to be honest and to be frank, from the outside, I hear a lot of complaining necessarily. Well, USTA doesn't do this, or USTA didn't do this for us, or what are they doing with this? But I also don't see a lot of research. And I also don't see a lot of people saying, well, what can I do to fix that? So in my mind, I had my own complaints, and I was like, well, how can I get into the other side so I can use my ideas to push the game forward, instead of being like, well, I don't think they do this, I think they should do this. So I was more able to go inside and go, hey, this is what I think we should do. How do we execute it, and how can we send it out to the rest of the world? And for me, because I have a background, because of my educational background, I have a master's in policy. I understand that everything you see doesn't necessarily, there's policies behind it. There's background behind it. So for me, I wanted to get back into that part so that I could be a decision maker on how money got spent, what kind of programs were created, what kind of programs, because I was someone who came from coaching, what kind of programs do we need on the grassroots level, on the intermediate level, on the advanced level, on the high performance level, and how can I use those ideas and try to implement them from the inside?
Dope. And what I hear you saying is something that's very important. We just had like a little match play session earlier today, and is a principle of just execute. The whole purpose is to get good at executing. And in that context, I was telling them about that as far as playing a match and trying to win points. But this is a life skill. You set a goal, and then there was no if, and, or try about it. It was, this is the goal. This is what I want to do. Now let's go out and execute. And now you're in a position, not just that you want to be, but you wanted to see different decisions being made. And then you made decisions, you executed the plan to get to where you can help different decisions being made. That's dope, man.
Absolutely.
All right. So second question. What I'm new to, well, no, I can't say that I'm new to it. My dad actually had me in the NJTL from early. But for those of us who don't know anything about NJTLs, what they are, what they do, what does an NJTL or being a part of one, what does that have to offer to a young player with big dreams, big aspirations? And do you have to be inside of an NJTL to qualify for some of those benefits?
You mean benefits and funding and things like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me break this down a couple of ways, right? First and foremost, I technically, in essence, work for the USTA Foundation, right? The USTA Foundation is the charitable arm of the USTA. It is what funds the NJTL networks. And in essence, an NJTL has a tennis component and a learning component, or an educational component. It's pretty much as simple as that. I've been able to pre-screen the question, so I know one of the next pieces you'll probably ask about is what, as you get better, are you still a part of an NJTL? So I think what people have to realize is, I think a lot of times on the outside, people only think of NJTL as beginner grassroots tennis, but that's not necessarily the truth. Actually, I don't want to say that's not necessarily the truth. It's not the truth at all. A lot of the beginnings of NJTL starts with grassroots tennis. And just because you become a high performance player doesn't mean you're no longer part of an NJTL. It just means you become a high performance player within the ecosystem. And I say that to say there are 300 NJTLs all across the country, where many of them do offer mainly grassroots or beginner tennis. What I particularly manage is not the network as a whole, but I manage the excellence program. The excellence program has, as of right now, it has 19 teams that are all made up of high performance players that are playing either at the state level, the sectional level, the national level, or the international level, and even some that have made it onto the pro tour. So that's why I don't ever want people to just think NJTL is beginner and grassroots tennis, because as you move up through an NJTL and you move up through the USTA tournament system and the ITF tournament system, we support players all the way till US Open championships. So we don't want people to just feel like, well, I started at an NJTL. You could start, you can finish, and depending on the infrastructure of the NJTL, you can go all the way through the pathway with an NJTL. I mean, I think the perfect examples of those are like a junior tennis champion center in College Park, Maryland, where you'll see a Francis Tiafoe, a Robin Montgomery, who came from our excellence program and won the US Open Junior Championship, a Claire Vigano, who started at Metropolitan Tennis and Education Group. And we still support both of those players as they go through their journey. So definitely the NJTL, it starts at a grassroots level, but it can go all the way up as far as you're willing to take it. And us as an entity will continue to support that, because we will support you from community to college. And if you go from past college, we'll support you even further than that.
Nice. Well, shoot, man, you're thorough, man. I can tell this isn't your first time.
I do a lot. I do a lot of speaking engagements.
Yeah, man. Shoot, you pretty much answered all the questions that I have, or that I could think of.
If I could give you a little bit more, because I feel like I didn't answer the one question you asked, and I want to make sure this is clear too.
By all means.
Outside of the foundation, you asked about funding, right?
Right.
So and I think a lot of, especially for the parents on the line, you know, tennis is a really expensive sport like that. We all know that. And I know at times, you know, we're always looking for funding to help with, you know, travel expenses, racket stringings, things like that. So historically, and some of these things are in flux and changing because there's new people in charge of different entities. The way you would get direct funding for the USTA really only came from 3 places. And this is something that everybody should know, because a lot of people look for funding or want funding, but don't know where it even comes from. So I want to make sure people are knowledgeable about where it comes from. Historically, funding, and when I say funding, I mean direct funding to players in particular, right? Not necessarily facility funding, although we have a great facilities group that does facilities funding and stuff like that. But I'm talking about direct funding to players comes from 3 different funnels, so to speak, in the USTA historically. It might not be the same now as things continue to evolve with who we have, you know, with new priorities and things like that. But historically, it comes from either the USTA Foundation and the Excellence Program, and that's mainly for high performance NJTL kids. Although if you're not a part of like one of the excellence teams, but you're a high performance player within an NJTL or are associated with an NJTL, you're still eligible for, I want to say, 7 of the 9 activations that we do yearly. As long as you're a part of an NJTL and meet the criteria, you are eligible for those, so you can apply for those. So
real quick, what's an activation?
Activation. So with the Excellence Program, we do 9 activations a year for NJTL players and also for Excellence Program players. So those are the events that we do yearly. I don't want to run them all down, but basically we do the All-American College Combine for 15 to 18-year-olds, the College Pathways Activation, which is an event that we just had for 15 to 18-year-olds. We also do the Junior Orange Bowl Camp for 12s and 14s. We do the American Express Excellence Cup. That is actually at the US Open. We haven't had it the last 2 years because of COVID. We bring those kids to the US Open and they play a small tournament there as well as go to the semis. That's been a very great and competitive activation. We also do the wild card camp for clay courts and hard courts. Those are for wild cards into boys clays and girls clays for 12s and 14s.
Okay.
Oh man. Oh, we have the HBCU Combine, which we usually sponsor players into. And now we have just launched our regional competition for the teams themselves, as well as our 10 and under event that we have at College Park. I think that's all 9, but if it's not, I'm sorry.
No. It's cool. I not only but I mean, I'm endeavoring to start an NJTL as well.
No, absolutely.
Under some great advice for some very knowledgeable people.
No, absolutely.
But it's good to know, not just for me, but for the parents as well. So I take it just using context clues, these activations are basically like events where you guys are kind of like talent seeking or talent grooming.
Absolutely.
Event. Okay, got you.
Yep, they're either in the form of training camps or tournament play and match play. So they're either training camps down here at the at our Orlando Center. The 2 college combines is to bring more opportunities for kids to be seen both by HBCUs and other universities with the All-American College Combine down here, or their match player tournament like the Amex Cup or the Excellence Team Cup, which is for our younger kids. But we're always trying to do through these is talent IDs, as much talent ID as we can. I also do site visits to all the excellence programs, all 19 of them, to see, you know, if there's a kid that's kind of like we that's not on our ID. And I would also say the excellence program as a whole is a partnership between the USTA Foundation and USTA Player Development. So a lot of the ID that I might go out and see, or I see a player, and if it really makes sense, it's definitely a conversation that we have with USTA PD as well. And what I would say too, as I was talking about the funding funnels, like I said, it's USTA Foundation. We also have an individual player grant program. So if you're not necessarily a part of an excellence team, but you're associated with an NJTL, there's funding that could be gained from there. And the other 2 places where you historically get funding in the USTA is USTA Player Development. There's very strict guidelines on that for their grants. You can all read that on the player development website. I don't speak for player development, but I know that's one of the funnels. Of course, there's very strict guidelines. You have to meet very specific benchmarks. So that's really for the elite of the elite when you're talking about funding there. And historically, diversity and inclusion has done a travel grant for diverse participants for national tournaments. Unfortunately, I don't believe they're going to continue to do that. I just kind of had a meeting with them. They're going to kind of recalibrate. But historically, those are the 3 places that do direct funding to players. So I know a lot of parents are wondering about things like that. So those are the ones that they're looking for.
All right. Well, we got time for 2 or 3 questions, and then I want to reserve the last 10 minutes or so for parents who are coaching their kids. But I got 2 questions for you, Mr. Sean Jones. All right. Why did the NJTL start? And if you could speak a little bit about how about Arthur Ashe's or how he fits into the beginning of the NJTL.
Right. So yes, the NJTL originally was the National Junior Tennis League. Actually, it evolved into National Junior Tennis and Learning. Charlie Pasquarelli and Arthur Ashe were the brainchilds behind NJTL. It's lasted over 50 years. I think 2 years ago was the 50th year that it's been in existence. So, I mean, this is the continued legacy of Arthur Ashe as we continue to, work this program and evolve this program and reach out as much for us to be able to create access to the game as much as we can.
Okay. All right. Next question. And let me know in the chat if that answered your question too, Rocky. And then the next question is the NJTL specific to low income or underserved players / minorities only, or what are the qualifications to be a part of an NJTL?
Yeah, I think that's for me, that's a little bit of a difficult question to answer. So the way I would answer it is this. The USTA Foundation and the portion of the NJTL, we do reserve most of our funds for under-resourced players. So I would say that, but it does not mean that participation in an NJTL is only reserved for under-resourced players, as we have, NJTL components to large, with large infrastructures like a JTCC, like a Legacy, like there's definitely a mix of socioeconomic classes within the NJTL network as a whole. So that's how I would answer that. And I think also I would always say that under-resourced is relative. You have a very expensive sport that everyone plays. So I wouldn't want to go into too much of the requirements from that perspective on this call. Gotcha. But it's definitely one of those things that we do evaluate each situation on a case-by-case basis when we're talking about from a funding perspective. But NJTLs are open for all to participate and be a part of the programming, especially from not only a tennis side but an educational side, because every NJTL does have an educational component. We have, one of the programs that we've rolled out most recently is SAT Prep with the Windward Academy. So there's SAT Prep opportunities within the NJTL network, other educational opportunities, and also for the executive directors and the people that run their NJTLs, there's also some business training and capacity building for NJTLs to help them expand from a business side. So that's more for Coach Terrell as he goes on his journey. But we've done capacity building to have organizations be able to build larger organizations and reach more people.
Nice. I'll definitely be tapping into that. I was actually on a call on Friday, Thursday or Friday, that CJ tagged me into. That was kind of talking about that, expanding and getting more resources to build your NJTLs, and they were talking about if you've been active and not active and all that kind of stuff. So, all right, well, cool. Well, that brings us to the conclusion of the main part. And this final part is for Do I have any? Let me see who's still on. Do I have any coach dads in the building? Go ahead and say something if you're a coach dad and you're online. If you're playing an active role in coaching your kid and just kind of working with them. Eddie, you still there? Guess not. All right. David, you still there? Oh, coach. Okay. Got one more question. Yeah. Co-coach dad. Okay. We'll take it. All right. You have one more question, Coach Rocky. Go ahead and shoot.
All right. I'm off. Let's see. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yep.
Loud and clear.
All right, cool. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Terrell, for having this. This is awesome, dude. I don't think everybody can see me because I'm like sitting behind my thing. Anyway, thank you, Terrell, for having this. This is awesome. Jermaine, Sean, y'all are great. Appreciate all your answers, your questions, and the answers that y'all were able to provide. I got a question in regards to Coach Dad with a 7-year-old, just turned 7-year-old. What advice do you have for me to keep tennis fun? I know Jermaine said something earlier about how he played other sports. And I thought that was interesting because tennis is such a competitive sport. I thought about being that I'm a coach. I thought about having my kids play other sports in the sense of, okay, they'll play baseball, they'll play basketball, but it's so competitive. By the time they come back to tennis, they'll have to start all over again. And was that something, that I was interested in doing? Did I want to stay on the track of them playing tennis? And, I throw a baseball with them. My daughter, she want to do dance. I throw a tutu on and we'll take the living room by storm. Just to kind of make sure tennis has a front row seat in regards to just it being so competitive. Both of y'all gentlemen, since y'all played tennis at such a high level, and obviously started young, y'all could take a stab at that. That's number one. Number two is what ways do you, what options what ideas do you have to keep tennis fun? Like I said, I have a 7-year-old. She's a decent player. She hits the ball well, but I want to make sure that it's fun for her and that she doesn't get burned out early. So those are the two questions I had. Thank you.
He's really good too.
Wow. Good to see you, Rocky. I definitely remember you from back in the day. Good to see you again. But great questions. We talk about, we're in a time where, things are highly competitive. But I feel like a lot of the recipes and the ingredients of, what it takes to be successful hasn't really changed. And so, everyone's in a rush, but, you still have to have, great technique. Your technique's only going to take you so far in tennis. And so we work with players, who are 15, 16 years old, who are having to, make some technical changes, And so there's never too late in that sense. Like if you're good, you're going to be like, if you have the right qualities and character, you'll acquire the skills. So, having said that, my advice would be to at least expose them to other sports, but make tennis the lifestyle, because it has to be a lifestyle. But, hey, everything revolves around tennis, but maybe we, go do soccer on Tuesdays, even if it's for 30 minutes, just to kind of keep things fresh, but also taking them out of their environment, a little bit, because you absorb and learn so many things from other environments, that, again, that's going to make your job easier as a coach. So I think, when you talk about, tennis, I think until you're like 9 or 10, like maybe even 10 years old, that's kind of like, all right, like you're starting to see, wow, where are they trending? Do they really still enjoy the game? I think at 7 years old, and just speaking from the 7-year-olds that, we work with a lot, I think that nobody knows who's going to be a pro at 7 years old. It's kind of laughable. or, you know, to say how far you're going to be. Like, you know, there's just so many things that go into play. Like, how tall are you going to be? You know, are you a male player? You know, how tall are you going to be? Like, if you're not tall, then you're going to have to be a dog. Like, you're going to have to be like a dog, like fitness wise, you know, you're going to be Michael Chain, basically. You know, like if you look at all the male players, you know, if you're under 6 feet, then, you know, you're going to have the ladder to like serve or something, you know, I don't know. But it's just so many things that play into it. So I think you got to enjoy the journey and have fun. And I know that sounds crazy because there's so many crazy parents and people around you who are trying to make 7-year-olds tennis seem like it's like Wimbledon or that. But I think that's one thing that, you know, everyone can't be Richard Williams. You know what I mean? You know, I think what I looked at was, hey, you know, what was the pathway of, you know, Shelby Rogers or, you know, or even a Madison Keys or, you know, a Sloane Stevens, like, you know, people who were like, okay, like that could be repeatable. We could do that. I'm not sure if we can repeat like Richard Williams. I don't know if like Coco Golf can be, you know, like, can you build that toughness in a kid to where they can have bad technique and be top 10 in the world, you know? You know, because I mean, we obviously like Coco is amazing, but she still has so much room to grow, which is scary, you know? So I think, but again, that's another, you know, Coco, I remember her going to like ballet practice or dance, you know, practice at, you know, 6 or 7 years old. But then, you know, her dad saw that desire in her eyes that, you know, she was pulling him to the tennis court. So, but I think there's no absolutes in tennis. I think that's what kind of I'll leave with. You know, there's no absolutes in tennis. There's no one way or wrong way to do something.
Yeah, I would just echo what Jermaine said. Jermaine really like killed it. You should definitely play other sports, but tennis being your lifestyle. Multi-sport. I mean, if you just listen to Jermaine talk earlier, he said he played AAU basketball. So he clearly played other sports to a certain level. I grew up playing basketball before I even touched the tennis racket. I didn't get serious about playing tennis until I was like 15 years old. And when you look, you know, across anecdotal evidence, you'll see that. I think Jermaine and I actually were having this conversation a little bit offline. Is most of the European players play soccer too. And even if, you know, Jermaine's been on the tour for quite a while, you see them playing little soccer games before they start tennis because they started playing soccer. I think a lot of our elite athletes in general, across tennis, but across other sports, started as multi-sport athletes. If you look at Vasily Lomachenko, I'm a big boxing fan. He was, you know, the world champion at 128. He was doing traditional Ukrainian dance before he started boxing. And that was a part of what he was able to do. Terrence Crawford, who just fought this weekend, was a wrestler. So there's all this intersport, just trying to figure out what other sport complements. I tend to think soccer and dance complement very well tennis. So it's definitely something, because even when you asked the question, I felt like a little trepidation in your voice at 7. It's like, she's 7, you know, you want her to play some other sports. You want her to if she really loves tennis, she'll always come back to her. But the athleticism that she gains from doing those other sports and other activities will be super helpful on her tennis journey. And the last example I'll give you is Ash Barty. You know, Ash Barty was another one that actually took some time off from tennis and came back, but was an elite athlete in another sport as well. So, I mean, it's definitely something, the multi-sport athlete, or at least exposure to multi-sports, would definitely help your daughter as she grows in her tennis game.
Yeah, and well said, Sean. And just to add on to that too, Rocky, I mean, I just, you know, for what lies ahead, don't be in a rush to join this madness, you know. But I will say, you know, one thing that I would like tell anyone if I had to do it all over again as a tennis player, I think Terrell and I, and maybe even I could speak for Sean, we were exposed to international tennis at a lot later in our career. So I didn't play my first ITF tournament until I was 16 and a half, you know, which is way too late. So, you know, the ITF junior level, it teaches you so many things. You know, I was in junior Wimbledon this year, but the warm up for Wimbledon is a place called Roehampton. And at Roehampton, you've got to live in these like pretty bad dorms. You know, and in the UK they make you eat beans and rice for breakfast. You don't have an option of scrambled eggs, you know. And you know, you're sharing like, you know, a bathroom sometimes, or so at these tournaments, there's a lot of character building in these junior ITFs. Then, you know, can you get that door, babe? Thank you. Sorry, yes. And then you have to like build a lot of character, because then you've got the, you know, the Russian girl who's gonna, you know, cheat you. Like you got to call your own lines, you know. So you think you're dealing with this stuff on a state or regional. It gets crazy out there, you know. Like I know parents like are kind of crazy here, but like they're spooky when like you're playing against a girl who like, okay, they put everything into this and like she's going to cheat to win, she's going to fight you to win. And so I think having your daughter or son just enjoy the journey, but exposing them to, you know, international tennis, that'll let them know if they want to do this. You'll learn really fast, you know, whether you want to do this or not, and you'll save a lot of time if you could play those as early as possible. So that would be my advice. If I can give you one thing, you know, get exposure.
And if I could add to that exposure bit, I think it's important for us to, and that's part of why I started this this monthly Zoom call, and we're gonna keep it going till I run out of people to bring on. But a lot of times with everybody, I always ask you one of the first things I ask you is, what are our goals? Because if you don't have a goal, if you don't set a goal, then what are we really doing? You know what I mean? But it's hard to set a goal for that you don't know exists, or for a possibility that you don't know exists. So the more you get exposed to what's out there, what's possible, the more accurate you can set the goal for what you really want out of this. You know what I mean? If you want to play pro tennis and you're barely making a high school team, that's fine. But you have to at least know that pro tennis exists to set the goal there, and then to figure out, do I want to do as much work as it takes to get there? Like, I'm never going to be the coach to tell you that, I don't know, it might be too late for you. I'm going to say, well, you know what? You're trying to make it from California to New York City on foot. It's possible, but are you willing to do that? You know what I mean? Are you willing to take that journey and to get in there and do all of the harsh and take everything that it takes to get it accomplished? And if you are, man, I'll be there with you. Or by phone. I don't know if I'm gonna walk with you, but I'm definitely gonna chart the journey and map it out. But the exposure is such a big component of that, because a lot of times, and I talk to so many parents, some of which are on the line, they're like, man, I didn't know this was possible. If I had known that you could do this with tennis, I would have played. You know what I mean? But we just don't know. And I'll conclude with that. You know, that's the goal of these. And so hopefully you all keep going. I'm recording them for whoever can't make it. And some parents told me they wouldn't be able to get on until later. But I'm not gonna hold nobody hostage. And I want to respect everyone's time. But I'm gonna keep doing these just to make them available, so that we can expose our kids to the different levels and the different resources, so we can plan our goals, and we can set our goals to where they really need to be. You know, it would suck to say, man, I want to make my high school team, but only because I didn't know you could play nationally or internationally as a 16-year-old, you know? So with that being said, thank you everyone for joining us. This is the first Tennis Mechanics monthly Q&A session, and won't be the last. So I will ask this before everyone gets off. Practice tomorrow. Are we doing quick show of hands? You can put a 1 for practice, a 2 for, we'll sit it out and start the holiday early. I had a couple of people call out not feeling well today. Some are traveling tomorrow, and yeah, I'm dealing with my grandfather's. We have no idea how many days he's got left. He's choosing his own path, and so we don't know how much longer that's gonna last. But I'm the type of person that's 100% committed to my word. And if y'all want to have practice tomorrow, we will have practice tomorrow. But if everyone's traveling, and there's no need to make everybody come out or to try to get everybody to come out and y'all trying to rush off to go cook your turkeys. Some stuff too. All right, we got 2 for, okay. So that's 4. Anybody else? No. All right, well, you can text me. Okay, 1. Now you're looking to practice. Okay, cool. All right. Well, we'll get off and I'll text everybody separately. You all have a good evening, and yeah.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Oh, thank you, Jermaine and Sean. I
Yes,
really
sir.
appreciate your time, and we'll do it again next time, man, or another time.
Yes,
We
sir.
really appreciate you doing
Yeah.
this, man.
Thank you, man. Happy holidays to everybody too.
Happy holidays.
Likewise.